All right, you're with Mr. B again. I'm Mr. Bilal, and I am talking with you about ethics of care and my work on that. And in this series, later on in this series, I'm going to be talking about how has ethics of care been needed in the time. But first, let me go to my outcomes and impact that I left in the last series. So, these are my introduction and key findings. The results and key findings of my study yielded from the intervention were both fascinating and interesting. From the survey indicated that the teacher researcher encouraged a caring community of learning in the classroom, 100%. Other results included the following: the teacher had considerable success in responding to students in 93%. The educator did well in constructed methods to articulate subjects requiring linking theory to practice, 91%. He provided adequate language support, promoted students to get along with each other, help one another, and support one another, built positive relationships for positive exposure to schooling and long term positive impacts on students' thinking habits. And the class teacher demonstrated affirmative dispositions such as welcoming and empowering students, 83%. It was evident to observers that there was open learning about moral education, teaching students to learn to care, 73%. Observers could see that the teacher facilitator used spirituality to relate, listen, and understand students. He modeled positive relationship and caring with his co teachers to students. There was evidence of fair classroom agreements. Created a positive and caring learning environment. He reinvented conventional methods of classroom management, and that was 67%. He balanced the flexibility of thinking with consistency in decision making, 64%. According to the observers, the caring practitioner should improve on one to one relationships with students, holding all students accountable for their behavior, developing student self management strategies in order to create a peaceful and efficient learning environment, giving more opportunities to show observers or school administrators the results and impacts of these caring methods and strategies on his students, and showing improvements in students' care for their learning, caring for themselves, and caring for the community. So that was about 50%. So now I will reflect on the impact of the project on the learners. The students learn to care through the teacher using caring as a method to teach students. Students incorporated their personal beliefs and learning to care related to the subject matter. Pupils used the teacher's care box to express their feelings towards the educator or inform him about something they liked or disliked in class. Students also learned to share their opinions with other students. Students were more likely to express their regret for their misbehaviors in class and make goals for improvements. They developed their writing skills and journaling about the ethics of care in relation to their subjects. Students felt comfortable coming to the teacher for any of their concerns. Reflection on the impact of the project on my institution. I have seen that ethics of care should be used in my school community in many ways. It should be adopted for in service teachers' development and framework. School leaders should try listening to others, providing encouragement to others, and believing in others to do their best. The leadership should continue to use empowering leadership strategies. I recommend that schools embrace ethics of care for both primary and secondary schools. Reflection on the impact of the project on me as an educator and a researcher. The ethics action research was about professional development for me learning how to create a learning environment of morality, model and connect with students, and promote values of ethics of care. I learned the importance of establishing one to one relationships with students. Even though it is not a penal system, it is paramount to hold every student accountable in many different ways that encourage the student intrinsically. Upon reflecting and teaching in the Gulf region, it is imperative that I interact with students in culturally appropriate ways. I learned more about how to meet the needs of every student. I will remember to encourage kids to be their best and not to define what that is for them. Find out what the students want to do and help them achieve it. I learned to encourage students to be innovative and creative. Students will comprehend more and gain more focus on classroom instruction when the teacher implements instructional strategies that are appropriate for their individual learning styles. The ethics of care requires teacher competence and critical thinking, while critical theorists focus on educational democracy on the part of the teacher. So, again, the ethics of care requires teacher competence and critical thinking on the part of the teacher. A good teacher requires students to think critically regarding their own moral systems. Teachers must have high intellectual competence. They must be able to address many different needs of the students. Teachers must assist students in being transformed into critical thinkers. And there must be mutually beneficial critical and reflective thinking applied to their own lives. As a I have gained more confidence in becoming an action research practitioner. I have indeed seen how it enhances my teaching practices. In this teaching program, I have learned to question authority. Synthesis of various research is critical in order to strengthen your points. I have learned how to create research questions for qualitative research based on the literature. And my research questions were closed in order to make sure that I had quantitative data. However, upon reflection, those questions allowed me to do an analysis. I have learned how to use reflective analysis to evaluate and assess my work, and I have used this method as a research tool, and I will continue to do so. Okay, I'm going to skip some things. I also discovered that there are views held by other researchers that are contrary and that align with Nell Nodding's ideas. Additionally, there are some aspects and ideas that I disagreed with in regard to Nell Noddings. However, I learned a lot from Nell Noddings. I respect and I admire her work. It was still important. So I went ahead and presented criticisms of um, other researchers on her theories. And that allowed me to go deep into the different approaches related to ethics of care and frameworks to consider all possibilities and angles in the research. Again, I would like to just to tell you, and I will show you, I'll post a picture. I have developed an acronym for CARE based on the context of where I teach. Students should know about the 10 C's: caring, community, communication, conflict, connect, challenge, competency, creative, citizen, and critical thinking. The 5 A's: authentic, agree, Arab leaders, ability, and another person. The 8 R's: relationship, respect, responsible, resolution, role, reflect, religion, and recognition. The 7 E's: expectations, empathy, ethical, empower, environment, engage, and equip. These can be shortened depending on the grade level, and of course, the words are adaptable to any context. For instance, the A can stand for American leaders or American curriculum. Suggestions on the way forward for the school that I was at. Further exploratory studies and more action research is one excellent way forward. The ethics of care can be used as a basis for developing a teacher and school leadership, student empowerment, and leadership frameworks or paradigms. There is so much potential for innovative and creative 21st century schools like my own to implement an ethics of care into the school's program, especially in light of the current trends and demands to support students in various ways in today's classrooms, not to mention now the pandemic, the COVID 19 pandemic. The ethics of care might mitigate social issues like bullying and students' inability or disinterest to be accountable for their learning, their own learning. Schools should understand that it takes time to see the impacts on students because it should be in line with the school's established core values. It can be used for a continuous in service teachers development and framework. Students can also get involved in this development. Teachers can implement a caring community classroom management strategy, reinvent conventional methods, and construct those methods that articulate multiple subjects which require the linking theory to practice. They must understand that teaching any topic is an act of caring. Not only teaching students to care for themselves, caring for one another, but also to care about worldviews through the subjects. Suggestions in the way forward for outside the institution that I worked for in the area of research. University programs can incorporate the ethics of care in pre-service teachers, preparation and framework, incorporating co-teaching, demonstrating positive communication to students. In K-12 schools, professional learning communities can take on the challenging task of nurturing, caring in schools that equips the learners to become students who recognize the needs of others and reach towards helping one another, advancing a caring community to become the core of lesson objectives. Curriculum and instruction should include dialogue about what students need, which are citizenship, moral life, and friendship. Leadership and teaching staff can empower students to make the right decisions for themselves by giving them autonomy to decide their own values. Implement a caring community where students incorporate self management strategies. Curriculum instruction should include dialogue about what students need, which are citizenship, moral life, and friendship. Schools should incorporate interdisciplinary studies into the curriculum. Schools should integrate interdisciplinary studies into all subjects. Horizontal integration and vertical integration. Scientists like Eagle Wilson from Harvard are really interested in multidisciplinary studies. My conclusion is implementing the ethics of care requires patience to see changes in the students towards their own learning, towards others, and their learning communities. Schools should move away from a tightly prescribed curriculum and performance. If school leadership takes on an ethics of care approach, they will move towards being fully inclusive. One of the main goals of ethics of care is to foster improvement in students' responsibility for their learning, caring for themselves, and caring for their communities. Ethics of care is not natural. Differentiating instruction is not easy, but neither is teaching. One of the most overlooked points on ethics of care is that it requires expertise in multiple subjects. The ability to teach rigorous, critical thinking effectively, both towards the student's learning academics and moral education. When teachers deal with high demands from leadership or outside agency and they experience burnout, it is essential to remember that the one carer can also become the self cared for in the same instances. Teachers must find ways to improve their own spirituality, meditate, exercise, eat well, read for enjoyment, and take care of their mental health. And I would like to engage in discussions. Let me know what you think about ethics of care. Is this something that you can implement in your teaching practices or in your professional learning community? Leave your comments and I'll be sure to respond. Thank you so much for listening, and let's care more about our students. Let's care about others. Let's care about the community, and let's care about the world. Until next time, it's Mr. B. Take care.